Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Legendarium Podcast. I am Craig Hanks, your host, and today we are talking the Silmarillion. Now, it's true for all of those of you yelling at us that we haven't actually finished our Silmarillion read-along yet, so what are you doing? Why aren't you reading the Silmarillion? Well, it's because we're going to back out and do a kind of just an overview discussion because I've got a guest I'm really excited about, and I've wanted to talk Tolkien with her for a while. It's Kaitlyn Facista from the Tea With Tolkien podcast. Kaitlyn, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty well myself. I have been an admirer of yours from afar from the podcast, but you're also Twitter famous, which is not easy to do. You're very Twitter famous. How does that feel, by the way?
Weird. Definitely.
How many followers are you up to now on Twitter?
I know it's more than 30,000, but I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of been going crazy this year.
Yeah, and it's probably only like 20,000 of those are Russian bots, so that's
right,
incredible.
Right. They're probably all Amazon bots, really.
Right? Oh gosh, do we? I wasn't even sure if we were going to get into the show. Do we talk about the show? I think we kind of have to talk about the show, don't we?
I feel like it's like people have varied opinions about it, but it's coming whether you like it or not. So it's kind of worth discussing at least a little bit, I guess.
Talking about it. Are you? How excited are you on a scale of 1 to Legolas riding a shield? You know.
I would say 6.5.
Yeah.
7.
All right.
Yeah. I think it'll be better. I think there will be more good than bad, but I know there will be bad. But I still think I'll enjoy watching it for the most part.
Yeah, I've in the time that I have been doing this podcast, gosh, for 8+ years now, I've kind of slowly moderated my position when it comes to I don't even want to call this an adaptation, if I'm being honest.
No,
but with adaptations like this, I've just kind of cooled down and said, you know what, it can be its own thing, and I have the book on my shelf, and that's not going away. Like I still have my thing that I can retreat to if I need to. I guess I'm not that bothered if there's some negative. Did you watch the Wheel of Time show?
I did, but I have not read the Wheel of Time books, so I don't know how faithfully adapted it was, but I know people were kind of upset about it, but I'm not totally sure.
Right. Yeah.
On that.
Anyway, I bring it up because of course it's Amazon, and maybe it's a harbinger of what's to come with the Lord of the Rings and all that. And for me, I'm like, I thought it was good, not great. And the stuff that fell down on the Wheel of Time, it's like, it's not because they poorly adapted it necessarily. It's just because it was kind of poorly done, period, as storytelling.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll see what they do with the Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Kind of just have to wait and see, I guess.
So you've been running a show called Tea With Tolkien. Tea With Tolkien. TEA. Okay, just so people can go look it up. Right. I'm a subscriber. They should subscribe. But tell people what you do on Tea With Tolkien.
Sure. Well, we kind of do a lot of different things. The primary thing that we do on Tea With Tolkien is we do a book club, and it's all online and it's all free. So we just basically go through different Tolkien books on a loop. Like we will read The Lord of the Rings, take a break, read the Silmarillion. And it's really lately just been those two. We go back and forth because there's always new people coming into the group and into the world of Tolkien. So it's a lot of book club stuff. But we've also done more topical episodes like let's talk about Gollum or let's talk about Lembas. And my episodes are a lot shorter than most Tolkien podcasts.
Yeah.
But I like that style personally more. I feel like it's more of like something you can listen to on your commute. It's not a big time commitment, I guess. So I love how there's like 2-hour long Tolkien podcasts, and then there's mine. They're more like 20, 30 minutes.
Right. I just listened.
So for everyone.
I was just mowing the lawn before we started recording, and I was listening to your Akalabeth episode because that's the episode. That's the section that we're coming up on. So Ryan and Kyle and I are going to record on Sunday night our discussion of Akalabeth. And so I dived into that one, and it's like 10-15 minutes long. It's real quick. It's mostly kind of a recap of what the story is and kind of pulling out the major stuff to either to know or to remember.
Yeah.
And as I was listening to it, I was like, gosh, this would be so valuable to people listening to our show who either, it's been years and years since they've read it, or they keep meaning to get around to it, but they haven't quite gotten there, but they still want to listen to our show or, whatever other show out there, like you're saying, with the 2-hour discussions. Go grab the Tea with Tolkien 10-minute explainer about what this is all about, and then you're kind of
like a spark notes.
You're up to speed a little bit, even if you're not getting all of the nitty-gritty stuff. So how long have you been doing it now?
I think I started Tea with Tolkien in 2017, but I don't think I started the podcast until maybe 2018. The podcast wasn't always on my mind. It was more of a blog and online community. Mm-hmm. And then the podcast kind of came as like a supplemental thing.
Yeah. And do you have, you were obviously obsessed with Tolkien like many of us were before you started doing all this. Has this deepened your obsession, or do you feel like, oh, it's a job now, and I don't want to, it's not as fun to dive into the Tolkien stuff?
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like with Tolkien, you can't have too much. There's just so much that he wrote. And then even if you could read everything he wrote, you have everything else that people have written about him. And there's just so much to unpack, so much more to learn. Every time I reread the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings, it's just like different things stand out to you, and it speaks to you in a different way. So I feel like ever since I started Tea with Tolkien, I've just been like diving deeper and deeper, and it's been so great.
Yeah, I find the same thing. Like, we did a Lord of the Rings reread last year, I think it was, and we got to book 6 and the scene on the field of Cormallen, and there was this bit that jumped out at me. It's like, I've been reading this book for 20 years. And, I've probably read it 20 times or more. And this thing, I'd never noticed this thing, and it blew my mind, and I had to go make a YouTube video about it. And it was all this whole production, because there's just so much to dig into. It's, there are a lot of great novels out there, but very few of them are as dense, with tidbits, with stuff as,
it just feels like everything keeps giving.
Do you have a favorite bit? Like, do you have a, well, no, let me back up. Do you have a favorite Tolkien work, period?
So the Silmarillion is my favorite Tolkien book, but like you were saying, with going back and rereads and finding something new in the Lord of the Rings, I love this line when Frodo is in Shelob's tunnel and he's holding the Phial of Galadriel, and Tolkien says something like about how Shelob had been safe from sun and moon and star for so long, but now a star had descended into the very earth. And that line is just so loaded, because he has the Phial of Galadriel, which holds the light of Arendelle, which holds the light from the Silmaril, which holds the light from the trees. And so it's just like suddenly thousands of years of history are just like colliding into this one sentence. And then when you see
not to mention Shelob being the daughter of Ungoliant, and that whole history of, the light versus the dark and all that.
Right. Like, it's just like mind blowing how Tolkien takes so many different things and he weaves them together. And then when they come to their fruition, it's just like, it knocks you over. It's crazy.
And I wonder with something like that, a passage like that, Frodo and Shelob and the light under the mountain, how much of that is he kind of purposely pulling together? He's puppet mastering all these things and saying, oh, okay, now I'm going to bring in this element from this, and it'll all collide. Or is it just that he created a mythology that was so rich and so textured that these moments can't help but come out every once in a while, organically? I don't know for sure if it was a happy accident, or
I'm sure it was like a mix of both. Because I feel like with a lot of stuff that he wrote, he'll be like, yeah, it kind of just came to me. But then in the revision, it got more solidified in certain ways. Yeah. which I think is how most things are written. But he was just such a master.
He really, I mean, obviously, Ryan and I named this the Legendarium podcast for a reason. It's a whole homage to Tolkien to begin with. So my respect for him knows no bounds. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, favorite Tolkien works. Have you guys done on your show Leaf by Niggle?
We have,
Good.
That was, I think we must have done that in 2019. I have a priest friend who he actually gave a whole sermon on Leaf by Niggle. And I was sitting in the pews listening, and I was like, wait, I need to have you on the podcast.
Am I at church listening to Leaf
so
by Niggle?
After that, I know, it was amazing. So I had him on, and it was a really fun episode. And he's like one of our good friends. So it was awesome.
It's that would be my choice for like pound for pound, page for page. My favorite Tolkien writing is probably Leaf by Niggle.
Oh, really?
Which is weird. I get that, and it's got some tough competition from Akalabeth, which is my favorite passage from the Silmarillion. It's there are actually some bits from The Hobbit that I love. But I think Leaf by Niggle might be my favorite.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think it makes you very hipster, I guess, because it's not the.
I know
you're a Tolkien hipster. I don't know.
Anybody who listens to the show knows that like they just saw like me kind of shrivel up like when you said I'm a hipster, because I know I'm kind of a hipster.
I know. I don't know what the word is anymore, because I feel like hipster is very like 2014. But what I'm trying to say is like that's not a common choice. No, I think you're absolutely
right. But it's. For those who haven't read it, who are listening to this, please, for the love of everything, just go read it. It's 20, 30 pages. It's really quick. It's quite short.
And there's an audiobook of it too. Really? I think the audiobook's it's like an hour long.
Yeah. Great. I didn't even know that existed. But anyway, it's, for me, it's, there's with the Silmarillion, you can say Akalabeth, specifically, but then the Silmarillion as a whole, it kind of is a really great microcosm of his beliefs about the world. You could say about the world in general, about how things work. And you can get all of these interesting lessons, these philosophical tidbits about, geopolitics or, social issues or whatever. But with Leaf by Niggle, it's really personal. And I feel like that's his best encapsulation of what the good life looks like on an individual basis. I love it so much for that. Anyway, all right. So the Silmarillion, what do you got coming up next? What are you guys tackling these days?
Well, we're wrapping up Silmarillion Summer. We're on part 3 right now. So I don't know when this episode will come out, but we are about to start part 4, which is Akalabeth. And then our last section is obviously of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. And I wanted to make our schedule so that we would be finishing that by the time the Amazon show started coming out. Even though that's not what the show is going to be about. Like the show is using the appendices. So we really should have read the appendices. But I made this schedule before I knew that. And I think it doesn't hurt to familiarize yourself with the Silmarillion anyways. And this was kind of just like a speed read. So a lot of the times we'll take 6 months to read the Silmarillion. But this time we did it in 2, I think, just to get people through it. Because I feel like with your first read of the Silmarillion, you just have to get through it. You're not going to remember everyone's names. You're not really fully going to get it.
Preaching my language.
But once you do read it, you're going to fall in love with the story and you're going to want to come back.
Yeah, people who longtime listeners of the show will be sick of hearing this story from me. But the first time I read the Silmarillion, I was 17, and my mom bought it for me on Valentine's Day at Barnes and Noble. That was my Valentine when I was 17.
That's a good Valentine's
present. Took it home, cracked it open, I was blown away within the first couple of pages. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was so different. I had no prep for it, no idea what I was getting into. I got all the way through it. It took me 3 months to read 300 pages. I got all the way to the end. Got to, the end. and went, I have no idea what I just read, but I loved it. And so I went immediately back to page one and started over again. And then I kind of, all right, I remember that name. And oh, yeah, that's right. They're related somehow. You start to connect the dots, but it's only after the first read, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's really, like, people don't want to hear it, but that's probably the only way to do it. Like, you just have to kind of struggle through it. You're not going to fully understand it. And it helps to have guides and podcasts to listen to. It obviously helps a lot, but at a certain point, you're just going to have to go for it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the way people talk about Malazan, the Book of the Fallen. It's just this immensely complex 10-book giant series with all these spin-offs and novellas and all.
Oh, wow.
And the first couple of books are completely impenetrable. You have no idea what's going on. You can't know what's going on. And I've never made it through book one. People keep telling me like, oh, right. But then, once you get to book 4, it all starts to come together. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. So it reminds me of that with the Silmarillion.
And I mean, life is short. I'm too busy reading the Silmarillion. I don't have time to read anything else.
That's true. People ask me why we don't cover more contemporary releases. What about the best of 2021? Where was your list on that? I'm like, I have no idea what was published in 2021. I was too busy reading this, that, and the other from 30, 40, 80 years
I know.
ago.
People who are like, they have on their Goodreads account like, oh, I've read 60 books this year. I'm like, oh, okay, I've just read the Silmarillion 60 times. I really, that's awesome for them, but I can't
Not
do that.
style.
I don't know.
Not your style. What do you read besides Tolkien?
No, I'm serious. Like, I can't remember the last time I've read something that wasn't Tolkien. I was listening to an audiobook. Well, I started the Dune audiobook. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I drive a lot. And, doing dishes and laundry, audiobooks are great. So I have listened to some of Dune. I guess the most recent book that I actually finished was Kristen Lavren's daughter.
Right on.
It was a good book. It was very sad.
Nice, yeah.
But it's the kind of book that like pierces your heart while you read it. So I feel like it was really good, but just
no,
sad.
audiobooks totally count for anybody keeping track at home. Audiobooks count. Okay, it's not the same. It's not the same, but
definitely.
It counts.
No, definitely not the same. But
do you have an opinion
on
works. Tolkien audiobook style? If people should do Tolkien audiobooks.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the way that Tolkien started telling the story of The Hobbit to his kids was, the original audiobook. He was saying out loud, and especially with all the songs and poetry, like, it's great hearing it read. I really love the audiobooks with Rob Inglis as the narrator. I think he does a really good job with all the songs, and it's nice. I don't know, good listening.
I can't rewind the clock. I can't go back to having never read the Silmarillion before. But anytime people tell me I've never read the Silmarillion before, so I got the audiobook and I'm about to start, I go, ooh, I don't know. I can't imagine listening to that many names and places, and foreign words and whatnot, and keeping that straight. I feel like now I enjoy dipping into the Silmarillion audiobook now and then because I have the context for it. But I'm not sure about a first timer.
I actually think it helps people more because he pronounces it for you. And he does get some of the names wrong. So then you'll be like me doing a Tolkien podcast and saying Maedhros' name wrong for 4 episodes because the audiobook narrator says things wrong. And then I had like a very kind listener write to me and be like, it's actually pronounced like this.
Nice. Oh, I'm sure we all get things wrong.
I think,
who cares?
Yeah. But I mean, the audiobook is really good, and he probably pronounces like 95% of things right. So if you are struggling through the Silmarillion, I love the audiobook.
There's a strong recommendation.
But, it's just personal preference, I guess. But I think it helps with the names because you can hear them and get an idea
Yeah.
of how to say them.
One thing that I love about the Silmarillion, speaking of pronunciation, is the pronunciation guide. And you get that in The Lord of the Rings as well. But it's something that I wish other fantasy authors would do more often. But the problem is that he meaning Tolkien was very rigid about his linguistic rules with his languages and all that. He actually had rules for pronunciation, whereas you read I'm not going to name any other authors' names, but read whatever other given fantasy author, and they have these crazy names and places in there, and you just kind of have to guess at how it might be pronounced, and then you get warring factions among the fans and all that. So.
Yeah, and with Tolkien, it was like, I invented this entire language, and this is what this name means in my invented language, so you better say it right. And then half of them he put in a poem, so if you say the name wrong, it messes with the meter of the poem. So it's like very, very important. But it's nice because for the most part, you can actually figure it out.
Yeah. All right, so where to go next? Do you speak Elvish? Okay, just checking.
No,
Do you know any random Elvish words?
When I was in like 7th grade, I learned some version of Tangwar, how to write it, so I could like write my name in Elvish on my notebooks and stuff. But I was probably way off, and I could not. I definitely don't remember any of it.
When I was just getting started learning another second language, when I was learning French, I had a copy of The Lord of the Rings. That was a huge part, actually, of how I learned French as well as I did. And I've lost a good bit now, but at the time, I kicked butt as a French speaker because I read The Lord of the Rings in French, and it took forever, and I had to have my dictionary open the whole time. But anyway, at the same time, I went to the back of the book and started learning the Tangwar script. For those who don't know, that's what the ring rhyme is written in. It's the language is the Black speech, but the writing is Tangwar. So I was learning this kind of just like you were saying. So I could write my name in it, or I could transcribe sounds into Tangwar, which is fun. But I never actually learned Elvish. But I had a listener a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago maybe, who was getting married, and they wanted an inscription on. He wanted an inscription on his ring and his wife's ring that was "As you wish" from the Princess Bride in Elvish.
That's funny.
And so he reached out. He's like, "Can you translate that?" And it took me like 3 or 4 hours to come up with 3 different translations.
Wow.
I'm like, try these, because I don't speak Elvish.
Well, when I was at Comic-Con this year, I met a bunch of other Tolkien fans, and I met some people who were like translating Elvish professionally. Like they'll do like consults or translate like if you want a tattoo, they'll help you with your translation. And I was just surrounded by people who were so much smarter than me, and it was like it's insane.
It's
but it was
the
really
curse
cool.
of the podcast host, right? It's
yeah,
sure.
Right.
I'll bring you on my show because you're the expert, and I talk. I can talk. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. How about let's do that.
Right.
Okay. All right. I had another topic I was going to chase down with you, Tolkien wise, but it's fleeing my mind now. So maybe let's go back. If we can circle back, we're going to probably retrace a lot of our steps for the second part of this conversation, but back to the show. Okay. So, all right, shake it out. We're getting back to the Amazon show now.
Right.
What
okay.
has been the most encouraging thing about the show, like the run up to the show, the announcements, the trailers, the casting, the whatever? What have you been most encouraged by?
I would say the most encouraging thing about the show has been seeing all of the First Age prologue
the
stuff.
The trees in the distance.
Like when they show us that shot of Valinor, and the 2 trees, it literally caused me to cry. And when we were at Comic-Con in Hall H, they played that clip on this massive screen with the speakers booming, and it was so loud that your chair was shaking. And you're just watching this person's elf walking up this hill, and you see like the two trees revealed before you, and like that it just takes my breath away to see something like that portrayed. So I know I'm gonna love all of the prologue, but it's just after the prologue is over.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
that's
know.
fair. That's fair. But I wanted to start with the positive stuff because people might as well know this. I'll put out a video at some point on YouTube. But I was putting together a video about the appendices. Here's what you need to know about the appendices, in prep for the show, whatever. And I'm working my way through this video, and I'm looking at other YouTubers, and I'm listening to some other podcasts talk about their feelings about the show. And I couldn't get over how angry everybody seemed to be. Just how dare you like touch this material, basically? Like how could they do it, right?
Right.
And I have my misgivings. Don't get me wrong. I get so tired of the reflexive negativity that when I talk about these things, I at least want to start by saying there are things to look forward to. I don't know what they're going to do with her character, but I like the casting of Morfydd Clark as Galadriel. That's great.
Yes.
Like, she looks great, and
she's
great. A great actress. And anyway.
Yeah, I think it has been really cool because I've gotten to go to, I got to go to London and see some of the footage earlier this year. And then when I was at Comic-Con, I got to meet some of the cast. And so that was really cool, just to hear. Well, first of all, to see some footage in London was really neat. And then in Comic-Con, when I got to talk to the cast, they had more questions for us in terms of like, what do you guys think? Are you guys nervous? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like, you could tell that they really valued our feedback and our opinion on how they were portraying these characters. Like, I was talking to the actor who's playing Isildur, and he was probably the most like concerned, like, what do you all think? What are your hopes for the show? What are you worried about? Like you could tell that it means a lot to the people putting it together, that the Tolkien fans are going to like it. So that was it was kind of a reassuring moment, I guess.
Well, that's good.
But
all that being said, what do you think is your biggest misgiving? What are you nervous about for the show?
Okay. Yeah, like I said, basically, as soon as the prologue is over, because I know what that'll be, that's solid. As soon as they step into their own storyline that they've created, because really it's their own story within Tolkien's story. So in my mind, that's the definition of fan fiction. But it's licensed and expensive fan fiction. And it's not like fan fiction is some derogatory thing. Like it doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It's just that it's going to be different. And so like stepping into the unknown of like, where are they going with this, is very nerve wracking. I also don't like, there was a clip that came out the other day where Galadriel was like, my brother died hunting the enemy. Now I'm taking up his mission. And it was implied that she was referring to Finrod. And I was like, but Finrod wasn't hunting the enemy. He was like trying to help Beren obtain a Silmaril, and the enemy was involved in this. But it was weird to me, like how they were trying to portray. It was like they were trying to change Finrod's story. But then at the same time, that's a trailer clip, and they're always misdirecting you in trailer clips. So every time something like that comes out, it just makes me like sit back and be like, wait a second, what are you doing here? Like, it makes me very nervous. And also the fact that they've invented so many characters.
See, that's the kind of thing that
I understand.
That doesn't bother me very much, because like you said, it's fan fiction, right?
Well, and I understand that they need to fill in the gaps because there's not a lot about the Second Age, but there are a lot of rumors around Adar. Have you seen the he's the one where in the poster that looks like Sauron. He's wearing like all black with spiky gloves and a big sword. And I don't know if that's his real name or if it's a code name, but it's very mysterious. Like, we still don't know who he is. He looks like Sauron, but everyone's like, no, it's not Sauron.
Yeah, that is weird.
So I don't know. There's just like,
it's
yeah. And then they put him on the Return of the King book cover when they made these tie-in book covers. And I'm like, is he even a canonical character? Like, I feel like once the show comes out and I'm able to wrap my mind around it and there's not so much secrecy around it, maybe it'll make sense. But right now, I'm just like, it's kind of like my head is spinning. Like, what's going on here?
I'm doing a pretty good job, like I said earlier, of just letting go and saying it'll be what it'll be. And my books are still on my shelves, you know. But
right.
I have to admit, the thing that's throwing me for a loop is that this is a second age story. And I get that there might be little things like you're talking about the Finrod issue, where it's like we're dinging up canon around the edges just a little bit, right?
That's how it feels.
The one thing that feels like a bit of an assault to me is the hobbits, or what are they calling the Harfoots?
The Harfoots
in the second age, where we know that there was no trace of these beings until the year 2000 third age or something like that.
But so I mean, the way that they reason that is like, well, hobbits have gone for so long without being noticed by men because they're so small and they can hide. Like the whole idea of hobbits being able to hide and go unnoticed. And I feel like they're kind of going with that to be like, well, we don't know hobbits weren't around at this time because all we have are the histories of men and elves. We don't, you know, like, and they wouldn't have known
Look
about
at us,
them.
talking each other off the ledge kind of, with all this stuff.
Right. So I can kind of go with that, but I feel like it almost feels like they're doing that with like everything. Like, okay, I can see how the Harfoots are doing this. Okay, I can see how this is happening. Okay. And after a certain point, it's like, how many things do I have to go with, you know?
It feels,
but
no, go ahead.
I'm still excited. I'm still excited about the show. I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm having a party at my house.
I'll be there.
When the premiere is, yeah. But it just makes like it almost changes every day. Like one day I'll be super excited. The next day I'm like really stressed out about it. So I don't know what, I think we just really have to wait till it comes out.
It's hobbits to me, they're kind of, or the Harfoots, sorry, are emblematic of kind of something that goes on in these productions. And we get this in Star Wars all the time. Okay. In Star Wars, whoever's producing it, whoever's writing it, whoever's making the Star Wars stuff says, right, but if there aren't any lightsabers, it's not Star Wars. Right. And so, you know, even in like the Mandalorian or whatever, you got to have the dark saber. Right. So we have to have these laser swords or it's not Star Wars. And most of us fans are like, yeah, you can do Star Wars without lightsabers. You can tell some other stories. I feel like hobbits kind of fill that role like, for these types of productions. Oh, but you know, if there's no hobbits, then.
Well, and I think that the writers, showrunners have even said that much. Like they didn't feel like this show would feel like Tolkien without hobbits.
Have you read the Silmarillion?
So I know. I kind of think that what they're doing is they're going to use the Harfoots to frame the narrative to bring in casual fans of Tolkien. And so they'll have something to be like, oh, I know hobbits.
Yeah.
And it'll bring them in. And then I'm hoping that they will stay on the sidelines because it wouldn't make sense for them to be a part of any really important plot because then all the men and elves would know they exist, which they're not supposed to. So I'm hoping that they'll play a minor role. They really haven't, like I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, the Harfoots, they're so cute. I love them so much. And I'm like, they really just don't speak to me. Like, I'm really mostly interested in the elves and their stories, I guess. And Numenor is really cool too.
I want to spend a lot of time in Numenor.
I have a feeling we will. I mean, it's one of the major plot lines
Right.
of the Second Age.
And
So
do we know when in the Second Age this is taking place? Is this the bitter end, our Farazone and all that stuff, right?
so that's the other thing. That's my other major concern is they're using time compression, which is like this very vague, undefined way for them to change everything, kind of. So I think when the show starts, we have Farazone, who is going to become the last king of Numenor, but he's not the king yet. So I think that the whole show is going to have to happen within his lifetime. But I don't think that Sauron has fully come to his strength yet. So it's almost like they're going all the way to the end, but at the same time, they're going towards the middle of the Second Age.
The middle. Yeah.
So they're kind of trying to compress everything, but we also see Isildur in season 1. So he's going to be here for the whole show.
Yeah, he's very young, numenorically speaking, at that time.
Yeah.
So, interesting. I have, in case you hadn't been able to notice, I've vaguely kept up with what's going on with the production, but I have not dived in. I just, I haven't gotten into the minutia, partly because I know I don't want to drive myself crazy. So,
yeah, I think I probably need to take a break because I am very, very invested in all of this. And I'm in a couple of group chats with other Tolkien people. So then anytime something's posted, like on Entertainment Weekly or any magazine, they'll be like sending the links. And then I'm like, oh, I have to drop everything and watch this video or read this article. And so I feel like I've stayed very on top of things, which is probably why I feel kind of stressed out about it. I think the average casual fan who's just going to watch the show, you don't need to do any work beforehand. Just turn it on when it starts and see what you think.
Yeah.
Right. So
we will see.
We'll see.
We will see. All right. Well, let's do one more topic. I've got one more question for you. I remembered what it was from earlier, and so I want to swing back toward the books and your podcast and you specifically and your love of Tolkien and all that stuff. So we'll leave the show behind for now, and I want to ask you a question. So, you mentioned earlier your Leaf by Niggle episode. You had your priest friend on who you'd heard in church giving that sermon, which reminded me, Tea with Tolkien is it's steeped in the same Catholic tradition that Tolkien was. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
And that's what I'm curious about.
I'm sure I don't do it perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. How do you, as a Catholic, if we don't mind us getting into these waters, how do you, as a Catholic, feel about somebody like me who doesn't come from your faith tradition and somebody else, putting different interpretations on, and how important do you feel like it is that you come at it from a Catholic perspective, and kind of just, I guess, in general, how does that work in your mind?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that for me, I feel like when you're studying any kind of literature or you're trying to understand it or wrap your mind around it, it's always best to approach it, at least in the beginning, to try to approach it in the same mindset that it was written in, because I feel like that is the way that it was intended to be interpreted, I guess. But at the same time, I know that Tolkien wasn't like, this is only for Catholics to understand, Like, he wanted everyone to love his stories. And I think that's why so many people love his stories, because he wasn't trying to write an allegory and he wasn't trying to evangelize like directly by shoving his beliefs down your throat. He was trying to write a beautiful story, but because he was so steeped in his own faith and all of the philosophy that comes with it, it just flowed through naturally. So like for me, I feel like being able to look at Tolkien's works from the same, or at least closer mindset than compared to what he wrote it in, like has been really enriching for me, I guess. But at the same time, like once a literary work leaves its author's desk, it goes out into the world, and the world is going to interpret it however. So it's not like you're wrong or you're like, incorrect if you're not interpreting it the exact same way that he might have in his head. But I just feel like it really enriches the reading of a work if you're trying to understand the frame of mind that they wrote it in.
So what you're saying is that's your starting point. You want to get in the author's head as a starting point, and then if you want to branch out, have your own interpretations and headcanon or whatever, then that. Right,
and then you apply your own. You would apply your own on top of it.
All right.
I guess.
Fair enough.
That's just that's how I approach it.
Do you find that a lot of your listenership is Catholic, or do you reach all sorts of people?
I think a lot of it is, we have like in my Discord community, one of our rules is this community is inspired by the works of Tolkien. You don't have to be Catholic to join it. Anyone is welcome, but we do ask that you're at least respectful of it. So I feel like it tends to probably draw in more Catholics or Christians. But there's definitely a lot of people in our group on Discord or followers that aren't religious at all.
That's the great thing about the Lord of the Rings specifically and Tolkien generally, is that it, like you said, it welcomes anybody who's willing to put a little thought into it.
Right. Like the Lord of the Rings is for everyone. It's not like I'm trying to be no, you can't have it. It's I'm trying to understand it and I want to share it with everyone.
Well, Kaitlyn, oftentimes, if I have an author on or something, at the end of the conversation, I'll say, give us an elevator pitch, for your book, or in your case, your podcast. But honestly, the last 40 minutes of conversation has been, I think, your pitch for people to go check out Tea with Tolkien. So I hope they do so. I think I said earlier, I'm a subscriber. I think other people should be also.
That's so kind.
Anything else you want to say about your show and the community around it?
Yeah, well, I honestly haven't updated the podcast since February. I don't know if anyone's noticed. We did a Lord of the Rings book club, and then I was actually I'm pregnant right now, and so I was in my first trimester, and I was so sick. So I have not done a podcast episode since February, I think, but. They can always
it's been pre-recorded.
It's just been nothing.
Okay, yeah.
So people can always subscribe. I'm sure it'll be back. But right now, our main community is our Discord community, and as we're doing the Silmarillion, we've been doing live voice chats in the Discord, and that has been really fun. I think it's a lot more rewarding than podcasting because I get feedback right away. With podcasting, I don't have a co-host, so I'm just talking to myself, and I don't know, I have no reactions. So it's a little harder for me. I think if I had a co-host or something, it would probably be a little more fun. So I love doing the voice chats on our Discord, and that's really just where we get together and hang out, talk about Tolkien.
I, on the other hand, have 7 co-hosts, and so it's just eventually you just get into fist fights after the recording, and it gets ugly. It gets real ugly.
Yeah, I really have I'm very, very controlling. And so I had I played around with the idea of having a co-host, but then the thought of having to compromise anything to do with my podcast, I was absolutely not. It's just going to be me. This is a one-person show.
That's funny. All right. Well, Kaitlyn, thank you so much. I hope people go check it out. I'll find a link. If I can get an invite link to your Discord, maybe I'll put that in the show notes.
If you just go to teawithtolkien.com/Discord, you have to sign up for our email list to get the link, which is kind of how I keep trolls out, honestly, because our Discord is very friendly and everyone's been very kind, and we haven't had really many run-ins with anyone trying to mess with us, I guess, which has not been the case in a lot of other Discord servers I've been in. So,
but that's how you find it. Familiar. I love our Discord server for that reason. We've been going for several years now.
Yeah.
And we've had 4 bots ever, and and a few trolls, and that's about it. So,
yeah, I feel like you have to kind of keep it secret and keep it safe.
And on that note, that's our exit line right there. Kaitlyn Facista, thank you so much from Tea with Tolkien. Really appreciate you taking some time and having a conversation with me. This is a conversation I've wanted to have for a long time, because, like I said, I've been admiring your Twitter feed, etc., from afar for a long time. So
nice. Well, thanks
cheers.
for having me on.
For everybody else, make sure you go to thelegendarium.com where you can find links to Patreon, Discord, all the things just that you can do to support the show. And of course, go to teawithtolkien.com as well. And I will talk to you all next time.